Hi, I'm Dwayne Thompson, Superintendent of Piqua City Schools and a proud 1987 graduate of the Piqua High School. I'd like to take you back in time for a little bit, if I could, to 1978. If you lived in 1978, the president at that time was Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was dealing with an energy crisis, a large recession, awful job market, and so much more. Laverne and Shirley was the #1 TV program. The Bee Gees were burning up the airwaves with their Saturday Night Fever, and Grease was the #1 movie that had slicked its way all the way to the box office. The Yankees were a winning team, the Cowboys were a winning team, and we can go all the way to Muhammad Ali, who was arguably one of the most famous people in America at that time. If you were in Piqua, however, another exciting event was happening that maybe wasn't known worldwide, but it was a big event for here for our community. The community was rallying together for the first time after 4 failed attempts to pass the bond issue to build what is now known as the new high school. So what made that so important was over 500 people worked on this campaign, and the majority of this community all came together to make this event happen. Now, if you lived in Piqua in 1978, you most likely got your news from the Piqua Daily Call or from WPTW. And if you listened to WPTW on November 7th, 1978, you most likely heard this.
Well, we're considering this a victory, and now, of course, a lot of the hard work's behind us, but there are a lot of things that we still have to do. We have to get our people together. We've got to get our staffing. We got to get with the architect, get the drawings done, break ground as soon as the good weather comes, and then plan for that opening in September 80. And this is the happiest day of my professional life, and I think we ought to make sure that everybody realizes that this was an effort by the total community. And as we were saying right here, the community has gotten themselves together and say, this is what we need to get Piqua going. And I think the high school is the first thing of many things to come.
I was hired in the 71-72 school year, and around 1975, and I know it was 1975 now because I just ran into Mark Reedy.
Yeah.
Mark Reedy happened to be in my class at the old high school and said, do you remember, Mr. Hamilton, when the blackboard fell off the wall? And I said, you were in that class?
Yeah.
I didn't remember him being in that class. I thought he was significantly younger and may have been actually at the new high school.
Okay.
But I said, yeah, I remember it well. I don't think I'd ever forget that.
Yeah.
But I was sitting at my desk talking with students, and I heard a sound, and it was like, and it got my attention soon enough that I reacted. And when I reacted to the sound, I turned around instinctively. My head just turned, and as I turned, I could see the molding holding the blackboard was coming away from the blackboard. And I instinctively jumped. And when I jumped, the whole board came down.
Oh my.
And I was sitting close enough to the blackboard that the board broke into pieces on my desk and chair that I had been sitting in. And it left a gash in the chair about that deep. So that was one of the things that I said, oh, we got to do better than this.
Yeah.
We got to have a new building because, you know, I was thinking I had to get hazard pay after that.
I can kind of relate. When I taught at South Street School when I first started my career, we had the old slate boards.
That's exactly what it was.
So I know how heavy that was. The same thing happened to me. I had one that was cracked down the middle, and I was writing on it actually, and it just came right out, and just it probably could have taken my toes off if I hadn't stepped back. But so I can reflect to that.
Yeah.
So there were lots of things that they talked about when they were doing the levy, and I if I remember correctly, there were several attempts to get the levy passed. And one of the things I remember reading about in some former newspaper articles getting ready for this was there was kind of a question out in the community of, did the students take care of the old high school, and would they take care of a new high school? So there was a lot of people out there saying, did we get enough use out of that old high school, and will they do a good job when they get here? And there were student reps that actually came into the newspaper saying, yes, we're going to make sure kids take care of this and so on. So when you came out here and when you go from there, first, do you think that the kids did a good job of that transition over the years?
I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anyone in the community who could actually come out and look at the high school and say that there wasn't a responsiveness on the part of the teachers, the students, the administrators, and the community as a whole in terms of maintaining this physical plan. This is a beautiful school.
Yeah.
No one really can imagine that it's 40 years old.
No, I would agree.
You know, so I think we've done a phenomenal job, and you know, hats off to the administration and leaders and people within the community who've insisted that we be held accountable for securing the physical, you know, well-being of the high school. Because it was their tax dollars that made it possible, and they had every right to the expectation that we would take care of it.
Sure. How about, let's talk about the location of the high school and some of the impact it had. So if I remember correctly, because I didn't get to go to the old high school, they had open lunches. When they moved out here, they didn't. That was a change. No parking at the old high school, lots of parking out here. And I remember people talking about, why are they building it clear out at the edge of town? And it did, even as a kid, to me, it felt like it was just way, way out there. So did kids talk about that? Do you remember those conversations at all, or what happened as, you know, we went from open lunch to a closed lunch? And
yeah, I remember that situation very well. And all of what you say is true. You know, we had open lunches, and even if we didn't have open lunches, because of where we were, very close to the business district.
Yeah.
There on College Street, and there were a couple of restaurants, I guess.
Yeah, Burger
The
Chef, Spot.
Yeah, the Burger Chef and so forth, were just a block away.
Yeah.
It made it convenient for some students to have the desire to be elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And so some students would come in and the building in one door and go out another door down the street to the Spot or, you know, Burger Chef, and they didn't wait for the open lunch period.
I don't know the difference of how many students owned cars back then to now, but it seems like when I was here between 83 and 87, more and more students ended up picking up a $500 car, $600 car, because it was the convenience of a student just driving out here. Did many kids have cars that you're aware of back then? Did they drive, or do you think the change of moving out here changed that?
Yeah, I really do think that that was one of the things that prompted people to, you know, students, parents and students, to allow, you know, their kids to get their license and own a car, because parents didn't want to transport them.
Yeah.
You know, that was the bottom line.
Yeah.
You know, if you got kids that were participating in you know, sports or after-school activities, at the old school, they walked.
Yeah.
You know,
It was
and
central. That was the advantage.
Exactly.
It was Pickwa Central.
Pickwa Central, yeah. And they walked to school and back home and so forth, but you weren't walking from the new school back into town, because that was really kind of a difficult trek, and so there had to be more people who were willing to either carpool or provide their children with you know, the means by which to, you know, drive.
Yeah. So what do you remember about the whole levy process? Because I think that's part of what sparked the interest in me of celebrating this, because I was just young, you know. Again, in 1978 when it passed, I would have been 8 years old, but I remember things, I remember key moments. Even at that age, I remember it being a pretty big deal, and I was fortunate enough to get to come to the high school after watching that whole process. It just feels like it was such a monumental accomplishment, not only for the school district, but for the community, when everything finally came together after several attempts to get this bond issue, and it finally worked, and it happened. What do you remember about leading up to it, some of the trials and some of the triumphs that happened through the levy process?
I was, you know, disappointed on those occasions when we failed to get the job done. But I remained hopeful that the citizens of Piqua would find it within their will to actually
To make it happen.
make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been a neat experience because I think it has generated a look at Piqua in a manner that has allowed us as Pickwads
Yeah.
to have a level of pride, maybe even arrogance in terms of,
Yeah.
look what we've done, look what,
Yeah.
Look at our school,
Yeah.
look at the complex that we've developed, and all of that, I think, has really kind of changed the profile of the community.
Jody, you were, what I remember is you were the last teacher here at the new high school that taught at the old high school. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I remember that. I remember that when you retired, we talked about that. And that was a sad day because it was kind of like the legacy of the old high school was moving on even further away.
That was it. The very last,
Yeah.
and then the last to have been here when this was first built.
Wow. So how many years did you teach at the old high school before you came out here?
I taught a year. I was hired in '79.
Really?
Dr. Pedroff asked me to come from the University of Akron, and I was teaching at Plain Local and Canton City schools. And he asked me to come down and start a learning disability program here for Piqua,
Yeah.
and I did.
So you taught 1 year at the
At
old
the
high
old
school.
high school.
What do you remember about it?
Oh, it was remarkable. Museum-like.
Uh-huh.
You would walk in, it was dark, ceilings were very high. You would start teaching, and then in the winter, the radiator would start clanging so loud,
Yeah.
and the ice would build up to about a half an inch on the inside of the window, and it would melt on the floor.
Wow.
And when you would walk out at the end of the day, you felt like you were using a jackhammer. It was loud.
Wow. So when you came out here then, what was that like the first time when you walked in? And what was it like when the kids came in the first time and there was a difference between the two learning environments?
It was just remarkable. To have everything so colorful and new and clean, new desks. There still was an antique down in room 128 where I was for all those years. It's that beautiful oak desk that came from the old high school.
Really?
And it's still there today.
So they brought some of the old furniture
Yes,
over.
yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And I loved that old desk. It was heavy,
Yeah.
very heavy.
What other things did they bring from the old high school? Because I remember when I came out here, I started in '83, and I remember it just feeling like everything was brand new.
There wasn't much new that they brought over that I recall. The entire process of getting the idea sold to the people of Piqua was remarkable.
Yeah.
The pre-planning, the focus groups got to us. We canvassed neighborhoods, we made phone calls, we put signs in the yard, and they did a remarkable job of selling it so it could be passed. And then, once they started the actual construction of this building, it was built on a swamp.
Yeah.
So every time they would dig, it would fill.
Yeah.
And that put things behind. But on the actual first day, it was like you died and went to heaven. No more 1920 chalkboards, clean carpeting, tile. It was like when they entered this, the city of Oz.
Yeah.
And everything was colorful and bright and beautiful.
It was like that through my whole years of high school from 83 to even 87. It felt brand new every day I walked into
Well,
this building.
think of it. Look
Yeah.
at it right now. Even with the renovation of this old wood shop
Yeah,
turned
yeah.
into a TV studio, this building after 40 years is still in absolutely remarkable condition.
Yeah, it was always very, very well cared for. And I was talking to some other people in these interviews, and we talked about how well this building has even morphed, because when I left in 87, there was not one piece of technology in terms of computers in the
Oh.
building. And I went to college and had never touched a computer yet. And now there are computer labs, and we've had such changes over the years of lots of different things that have just made those adaptations.
It was like that too with us as teachers.
Yeah.
We had to learn how to use computers. We
Yeah.
never, were instructed in anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was just changing times. But I think a really important point too is to make, you have companies like Myers Restoration and Bryan Brothers that did our roof and have done all our painting.
Yeah.
And those are Pickwick kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot of pride in knowing that.
Yeah, yeah, and still a lot of projects that are remaining to be done. I mean, it's 40 years old. There are some things that we're going to have to do, but you still walk through here, and it's just a great, great building.
Well, buildings are buildings. They're nothing without the people that
Yeah.
bring them to life.
Yeah,
And over 40 years, think of the kids that have come out of this building and have gone on to change someone's life.
yeah,
Or, even the ones that we've lost. We've lost a number of kids
Sure.
and staff,
yeah.
and time takes its toll.
You mentioned, buildings are buildings, and it was the people that brought it to life, and I think that's really what this story is. It kind of started when I ran into Gordy Wise at Draft House 311 one night, and he was telling me about the campaign for the bond issue, and he got very emotional. And I just was fascinated with the story, because I was only 8 when the levy passed.
Correct.
And 1970 was the first time it had started, and I would have been 1. So I didn't really know all those details. And then 2 weeks later, I run into Dwayne Bachman, and I'm telling him about me and Gordy talking, and of course he starts talking like he's announcing a football game. He's getting all excited, and he's revved up. And then 2 days later, he comes into my office with memorabilia and all this stuff, and he says, "Dwayne, you have to put this together. You have to tell the story." And I said, okay, let's do it. So it's just gone from there. But I've learned how well orchestrated that whole process was, and how the community was really kind of divided early on, and then really came together to make the bond issue pass. So you came in '79. Do you remember hearing stories or talking to people? Or I'm sure the energy was really strong at that point.
It would depend on exactly where you lived in Piqua.
Uh-huh.
Where I did, which was just blocks away from Wilder, was great neighbors. And, you could sit and have great conversations with them. And it wasn't hard to sell the idea.
Yeah.
All their kids had gone through the old high school, and I think they understood the need for something new.
Yeah. There was a story somebody shared with me about how some people would come to look here. Maybe some doctors were thinking about moving because we had a hospital at that time, and they decided not to after they looked at the old high school because it just was so outdated. What new programs do you remember happening at the new high school? What evolved and became new for the first time when the high school opened?
Well, obviously the special ed programs. I mean, we had some of the best special ed teachers I've ever seen, and we've been able to help the kids just find their way, be successful and contribute to our city. Technology wise would be the main change.
Yeah.
I mean, we transitioned later on from shops to to technology, to computer, keyboarding, things of that nature that we had never, anticipated.
Yeah.
And with the onset of the computer and all this and that, it was something that just needed to change
Yeah.
too.
I was in the music program. That was my thing when I was in high school, and I've had the chance to talk to Don Smith about the theater and the Hartselle Center for Performing Arts and how great that was compared to the old theater that was at the old high school.
You bring up a good point. That's something that I, had forgotten about. That theater
Yeah.
was really old time.
Yeah.
It was like you were going back into the 40s or
And,
so.
and it was larger than what we have
It was
now.
quite large.
But when you look at what we have now, it's
beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It's just
beautiful.
amazing.
And you can't say enough about
Yeah.
the music department.
Yeah.
That's synonymous with just, superior.
Yeah.
They've been great from the get-go.
Yeah. How about the Garvey Gymnasium? I mean, we went, and it's still legendary, the pit and Roosevelt Field House, but we went from that and the tiny gym that was at the old high school. You
Well,
didn't have a place to sit even.
I spent a lot of time in that little gym because I coached baseball with Jim Hardman.
Yeah.
And that was our spring training place, was that little half gym.
So you went from that to Garvey Gym, which is
beautiful.
it's still beautiful, still
It's-
amazing.
The whole facility is beautiful. It looks like it's brand new.
Yeah. So
After 40 years.
oh yeah, it's my understanding from Dwayne Bachman that the high school actually opened with a basketball game. Did you go to the basketball game? Do you remember that event?
I did, and I had forgotten about that, but it did.
What was the buzz like? What was
yeah. It was electrifying.
it? Yeah.
You were so full of pride, excitement. It's hard, to put a name on it, I'll tell you.
Do you remember the kids walking into the high school the first day that it opened? Yeah, looking around everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Beautiful lockers, just beautiful, surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
And they were quite excited.
How did the teaching staff get acclimated to the new building? Because you were still teaching at the old. You had to come out here at some point to get ready for this change because you were going to be helping students. So what was that like?
It started when we actually started packing our stuff up, I think. And then you talk about community involvement.
Yeah.
The National Guard, anyone who had a truck, just bringing stuff over. And I think it was basically working through just unpacking and helping that you became familiar with the building.
Yeah.
I don't remember any formal sessions where, we walked through the building, and I'm sure we did, but I think it was, trial by discovery.
Yeah.
Once you knew where your room was, and you got it set up, then, you could get out and explore.
Yeah. Yeah. Any favorite memory that you have teaching here at the new high school?
Oh, there's millions of them, but graduations.
In Garvey Gym. Now we do them at the stadium, but they
Yeah.
used to be in Garvey.
Graduations and the loss of students.
Yeah.
Probably the most difficult thing is to see an empty desk one day and
Yeah.
try to deal with that. But
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you can remember that you want to share?
I just, I'm happy to be here. I'm very proud of this building and everything that we accomplished.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. So, Gary, you taught at the old high school and you made the transition to the new high school. Tell me a little bit about the difference between those buildings. What was it like at the old high school, and what did you realize was the greatness of the new high school?
The beauty of the old high school was in my room, I was down in a corner where nobody bothered me. Nobody knew where I was, really. I could teach there and totally comfortable. At the new high school, obviously, better surroundings, more beautiful surroundings. You would have to have lived in my classroom at the old high school to realize that any time we had a heavy snowfall and it started melting, the water would run from the roof down and would create a curtain of water in my door. And there were times when, oh, they overflowed the restroom upstairs. No, it's just the snow melting. And then once in a while, I would tell them that it overflowed the restroom, and they all go, oh, yuck! Well, we didn't have that problem out here. But out here, with the good thing out here, a new building, the kids happier. It was easier to find your way around. The old building was 3 stories and 7 levels.
Yeah.
First 2, 3, 4 weeks of school, you would find freshmen wandering around that building, so totally lost. And they had this panicked look on their face. They knew they were supposed to be in class, and the bell had rung, and they weren't in class. Okay, hold on, I'll take you there. And that was it.
Yeah.
Out here, it was a lot easier to find your way around.
So one of the issues when they were trying to pass the bond issue, so it went through 4 times of failure from 1970, I believe, all the way to like 76 or so. Finally passes, but one of the critiques, if you will, was the kids will never take care of a new building. And I've seen newspaper clippings and even ads by some of the students where they're on there saying, yes, we are going to take care of a new building. When we came out here, do you believe that students really did a good job of taking care of the building and the district as a whole?
Yes. Now, understand something. When we came out here, the central office administration put some limitations that I thought were excessive and restrictive. For instance, nothing could be put on the walls. Now, in my classroom, after I went back to the classroom, I was fortunate. I had a metal wall. There was a demountable metal wall between my room and the room on the end, there on the 2nd floor. I went and rounded up a whole bunch of old refrigerator magnets, and I put all the stuff, newspapers and charts and whatever I wanted. I could literally attach them to the wall magnetically, or I could put them on the blackboards because they weren't black. They weren't slate, they were metal, painted metal. But we still used them a lot. But I could have fixed things with those refrigerator magnets. But putting tape on the walls was a no-no. Consequently, the building, did they care for it? Yes. Did we have some problems? Yes, of course we did. Did you find things written on boys' restroom walls? Yes. And the one thing that we were very careful about is, as soon as it's written, get it off. Graffiti breeds graffiti. Did you find things written on girls' restroom walls? Oh, yes. And sometimes it was as vulgar or worse than the boys. Same thing. Get it off the wall. Did the girls write more than the boys? No, the boys still kept up. As far as caring for the building, things like vent lockers, things like trash on the floors. No, you didn't have that.
Yeah.
The kids were aware, and hey, that's why we're talking about this. What now, 39 years later? in a building that still looks comparatively new.
Yeah.
So
I remember being a student out here, excuse me, and them talking about the importance of keeping the building up. So
yeah,
I remember that early on.
sure.
Another point of contention was, not contention, but if the high school moved out here, a selling point was they were going to get rid of the open lunch period. Do you remember the open lunch period and the troubles that you had with that? And what was it like when they moved out here? Because I remember students complaining now they're stuck out here and they've got to eat the school lunch. So what was the difference between all of that when it went down?
Oh dear, yeah, they actually closed the lunch before we left the
Really?
old building. And you got a lot of, or they tried, you got a lot of complaints from local parents. You had complaints from some of the restaurants on occasion. The open lunch got to be a little entertaining at the old building because we had a trade and industries program, vocational program.
Yeah.
For a number of years, the boys who were in the trade and industries program bought and fixed up particular types of cars, mainly old Cadillacs or great big Bonneville Pontiacs, generally black. And they would get out during this 30, 45 minutes that we had for lunch, and they would cruise the block around the high school. And the joke came to be, now wait a second, we got a problem when the kids are driving better cars than the teachers do? But the closed lunch hour solved the neighborhood problem. Out here, the closed lunch hour was a necessity.
Yeah.
Closest thing to you would have been the few fast food places out on 36, or you'd have to go clear into town. Yeah, did the kids complain? Yes, we're in a prison, they won't let us out. We have to eat the school lunch. No, you don't. You can always bring your own. I remember telling more than one student that. Bring your own. But the closed lunch hour was a necessity out here.
Did you notice more kids owning cars that were out here after the high school opened than maybe when it was the central high school in the center of town?
You know, parking was such around Central. There was no parking lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was about 6 spaces up in the back, and there wasn't any in front. They've created those in the years since that the apartments
Sure.
went in. So it was park on the street. Did more kids own cars? I've got a feeling no. That when you came out here, you had more kids driving coming out here. And that was, again, one of the problems was how do you control the kids? We tried to institute parking stickers, or we did institute parking stickers, and got a lot of pushback from, I'm not putting that on. My mama bought me a new car, and I'm not putting that on a bumper or anything else. And you look at them, okay, don't drive. Well, you put us out here, so yeah, I've got a feeling there were more. And the far parking lot at the time, and I really don't know what the parking lot designs are now, what the designations are. The far parking lot out by the band practice field, that was the student lot.
Yeah.
The near parking lot was the teacher lot. Almost the only people that parked in front were the office folks, music, the athletes, phys ed types. The shop teachers parked behind here. But beyond that, yeah, the kids, there was an awful lot of cars out
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So you mentioned the North Central accreditation. That used to be the standard for high schools. Now it's all state testing, as you referenced earlier. Talk a little bit about that, because that became, even early on, the crux of the levy. I mean, I go back and read old articles and hear some of the old commercials, and a lot of that was, we're going to lose our accreditation. So how important was that? What was involved with that? Because a lot of people today don't even know what that is. So what was involved with that?
The North Central Association of Colleges and Secondary Schools was an organization that inspected and certified the educational excellence of a school. When you had a North Central evaluation, that would take better part of 2 years.
Wow.
The first year, you would do the self-evaluation, where literally you would divide the staff up into groups, look at departments, look at what is being taught, look at the building, look at your extracurricular activities, look at everything that had to do with education in the school. And there were forms that had to be filled out. There were grades, evaluations that had to be given. And you didn't want to look really bad, but at the same point, there were times when you had to tell the truth about yourself.
Yeah.
And not everything was wonderful. I remember being involved in an evaluation with another school, and I'm not sure what they were told, but the year before, or 2 years before, they had this wonderful art program that had all sorts of dimensions to it. And then, because budget cuts, they had cut the art program down to just Art 1, Art 2, and that was it.
Yeah.
And yet in their North Central evaluation, in their self-evaluation, they said nothing at all about losing their art program. And I was assigned to observe that art program, and I had a question. You had a wonderful art program. Don't you want it back? Well, yeah, but we weren't supposed to say that. Okay. I was very critical of it. Maybe that's why I was never asked to do another North Central evaluation, which didn't bother me in the least. But you did this year-long self-study, and then a visiting team would come in the next year. They'd spend a week with you, and they would look at the school. They would sit in classes. They would observe everything, the hallways, the way it went on, the way the building was conducted, the way the students act. There was nothing that was off limits to them.
Yeah.
And then they would write their report of what they saw, what they observed. They had our self-evaluations to start with, and then they would write the final report and either recommend continuing accreditation or being put on I can't remember that terminology, like a watch list, or you lost it. Now, if the student, what was the value of this? If a student graduated from an accredited school, that told any college that yes, this school at least met above minimum standards, that these students came out, the grades that they got would be valid. They had been given a good course of study. I'm not going to, I started to use the term rigorous, but I hate that because that has become a political catchword and it doesn't have any meaning. But they had been given a good course of study and they were basically prepared. If you weren't accredited, if you lost that, your students could still get into any state school because state schools have to take someone who has a high school diploma.
Yeah.
But what about the private schools? And there's a load of them here in Ohio, and they're among some of the best. Ohio Northern has served a great many Piqua students.
Wittenberg.
Otterbein, Wittenberg, Cedarville, UD picks up students. They didn't have to take you. If you weren't from an accredited school and they didn't trust your transcript, they just said, we're sorry.
How
But
often did they do the accreditation? You said it took 2 years. Was it?
Every 5 or 7, I can't remember
So
which.
if you went 5 years and became non-credited, did you have to wait another 5 years to become credited, or did you get have the
No,
opportunity to?
you could make some fundamental changes and get reevaluated.
Was there an appeal process?
Yes.
Okay.
And you could appeal, and it would be taken up by the North Central Board of Trustees or whatever they call themselves. In essence, that's what happened to us. We lost our accreditation after '76 in the evaluation. We lost the accreditation because of our facilities. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
When we passed the levy, that was what, 78?
November 7th, 78. Yep.
Okay. When we passed that, we immediately turned around and reapplied for accreditation based on the fact that new facilities would be forthcoming, and North Central granted us that accreditation even before the building was built. But they granted it to us based on the fact that we would be resolving the problem and not as we had been throughout much of the 70s, from 1970 on, the first one, where we were just going nowhere.
Yeah.
There was no hope for it.
Yeah. What do you remember people talking about when the levies were going through? When did you start teaching in Piqua?
66.
Okay, so you were here before the first bond issue. What do you remember people being the most concerned about? I think of the 70s being an economic, not a good time. What were some of the other things, though, that people were saying?
Among the big issues, of course, were, well, why can't you just update? Can't you just take the central building, update the central building? What's wrong with it? It's centrally located. It's there. Or
Good enough for me?
Or
Why is it good enough?
tear down what was in those days called Pastel Paradise. It was the rentals on the other side of High Street and on the west side of College in the 200 block. You can expand that way, or you can expand, just tear down some of those houses and expand that way. You won't have to build this building. So, and the hard thing was to tell them, folks, if we start remodeling this building, everything has to be brought up to code. One of the interesting things to see is to go into that old building, go under the stage. Now you're into a real low area, but go under the stage in that old building and see the main carrier beam. It is 36 by 36 heart oak.
Wow.
You're never going to break that thing.
Yeah.
But they would have just to upgrade that, you would have gone in, dug new foundations, Once you started remodeling, you'd have to dug new foundations and put on each side at least a 16-inch I-beam with at least a 8 to 10, 12-inch H-column holding it up.
Yeah.
It would have been, you would have sunk millions of dollars into a building that was built, initially started, well, they started it in 1912. The flood slowed them down. So it was from 1915.
Yeah.
There was, they had already put one addition on. The state, well, there were two additions. There was a 47 addition, which were the shops and physics, chemistry, and the band, orchestra, choir rooms. And dressing rooms were out in that addition. Then, in the early 60s, the state came in, did an evaluation, said you need to build a new high school. The Board of Education at that time, and this is one thing about our Board of Education, people complain at times, well, you're wasting money, you're wasting money. Anybody who's going to say that the Piqua schools are wasting money had better come down and take a hard look. We have now and have always had one of the most conservative boards of education. And when I remember one gentleman who ran for the board, got elected on a campaign he was going to cut out the fat. He was the most frustrated board member once he got on because he discovered there was no, I mean, his big complaints were 20, 30, 50, up to $100 expenditures.
Yeah.
When he expected to find thousands. It wasn't there. And ultimately he got off the board. It was frustrating to him. And so they put on, in spite of the state telling them don't do it, they put the 65 edition on. It opened in 65. I taught in that edition because my first year of teaching, I taught business, not social studies. And so I taught in that New South edition. But it didn't solve our problems.
Yeah.
I mean, it gave us some more space, but it didn't solve the problems.
Yeah. What was your favorite part about the new high school when it opened? What did you like the most?
Okay. For 3 years, I was an assistant principal. First year, 79, 80, I was half-time. Taught assistant principal for half of the time. The other half-time was, I had an office in the guidance suite, down at the end. No windows, a table, walls. I had charts, diagrams. I had a full set of construction drawings laid out there. My job was to figure out what it would take to equip this building. How many chairs, how many desks, how many tables, how many pencil sharpeners, how many trash cans. Make sure you have the sanitary disposal units in the girls' bathrooms. What kind of make sure all the toilet paper's figured, make sure paper towels, make sure everything. Chart after chart after chart. Then it was start collecting boxes, develop a numbering system for the boxes so that we knew what boxes there were, a number on each box that went with an inventory that the teacher filled out for every box that they loaded. Then on that box, a second number was put on, usually in magic marker, so it was big, but it was the room number out here so that when we moved, that would be taken to the room it was supposed to be in. And then National Guard who did a magnificent job. They, in a weekend, they created a drill weekend and they moved us in one weekend. Wow. We moved all the boxes down from 3rd floor, 2nd floor, and all the other levels, put them in a hallway so that they could back their 4x4s in. And we had a rolling gangway, and they just start shoving boxes in. And when they got out here, now I'm not sure what you're using, the big room that's on the 1st floor opposite the English rooms. That was a study hall. Mm-hmm. That was where we unloaded the boxes. And then in the next few days, we had teachers, we had students that came out to give their time, and with 2-wheel dollies, and they rolled dollies all over the place. And one of the things that made me happiest was just a few days ago, I was talking to Linda Sumner, who taught business out here. She said the one thing about that move, none of the boxes got lost. Every box was in it in my room, and everything I wanted was there when I walked in. So, what did I like most about it? For a year, actually a year and some months, year and a half, because it went in clear. We moved in February. I had a ball. Yeah. I came out here. I played custodian out here a number of days, cleaning floors, trying to get the building ready. It wasn't ready when we moved in. The metal shops weren't done. Number of other parts of the building weren't finished, but we moved anyway. And then the rest of that March, April, May, I was what assistant principals do. And then for the next year, I was an assistant principal.
Gas.
Okay.
Back in 1970, natural gas was frozen. You couldn't get natural gas.
Uh-huh.
When Troy built that junior high school, it was all electric. So, but a couple of years earlier, I had to deal with DP&L, and we bought propane from Indiana. We brought all the propane. We kept our schools open.
Okay.
So when the time came out, I called DP&L. I had this guy's name, and I said, do you remember me? I'm Mitch Penn from Pickwa. What's the possibility of getting natural gas for our high school? He said, well, it's frozen right now. I don't know. And 2 days later, Mr. Schultz walks into my office. Mr. Schultz's son went to this school.
Okay.
He's a Pickwa guy. He said, Mitch, I understand you're interested in natural gas. I said, yeah, I don't want to have all electricity. It'd be too expensive.
Oh, yeah.
He said, are you willing to build the line from the main terminal? I said, yeah, I can do that. Remember, I made $1 million interest. I had money.
Yeah.
So I built the line. Not I should say they built the line. I paid them for it. So we got natural gas in this building. All other buildings had electricity. And that was a feather in our cap.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys from Troy said, how'd you pull that off, Mitch? How'd you pull it? Well, I guess we're lucky.
Yeah. Determination. So talk a little bit about how all this came to play, because we've talked to people about the levy campaign and all the things that led up to this. So a lot of people did some pre-work before you get in there and start rolling your sleeves up.
They did a wonderful job. Now remember, we lost 4 high school campaigns. We lost 4. These people didn't like it. Pickwa people had pride. So they rolled up their sleeve and got together, funded it, worked very hard. You have to give them compliments. They did a good job.
Yeah. What year did you start in your position?
Mine?
What year did you start? Yeah.
I came here in 1969.
Okay.
I've been in
I was just born that year. So was Catherine, your daughter. We were just born. So
yeah. She was a little baby when I moved in. Yeah, and been here almost 48 years. I hope I'm still considered a Pickwa. This is my hometown.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, after 50 years, next year will be 50 years or 49 years.
Well, the work you did here is
Right.
truly, the work for the high school is truly a legacy, I think, for our community, and people continue to be very proud of this,
Yeah.
this structure. And you, all the people I've been speaking to, I've talked to a number of people, and then they've all been saying, you got to talk to Mitch, you got to talk to Mitch. So
Well-
you're my last interview. We've been waiting for you to get back here from Florida. And I'm anxious to just find out, when you get engaged with this process, what are some of the things that you started doing, and how did your work evolve around this building and the structure now?
Well, we got the natural gas, and I'm really proud of that. We were able to do that. And I had some memories. I remember, I don't have my complete faculty. Everything comes back to these spurts. And as I thought since Monday, I remember the super graphics.
Uh-huh.
The architect and I came to loggerheads many times, many
Yeah.
times. And the one I remember was the gym. And he had the super graphics, on paper. He showed me super graphics. That would be super graphic. And I said, no, no, no. I don't want this in the gymnasium. He said, why? I said, don't you understand? Girls are Indians too.
Yeah.
Oh, I never thought of that.
And they had all male Indian.
Yeah, everything was
Yeah,
male.
yeah.
And I didn't like that. I had $2.
Right, yeah.
And one was in this school.
Yeah, yeah.
And he went back to the drawing board and came up with another concept, and I bought it from him. At least he did something for me.
If I remember correctly, weren't they like basketball players? Wasn't some sports, they were sports figures, kind of silhouettes?
Everything is male dominated.
Yeah.
And I said, girls will play volleyball here,
Yeah,
girls
yeah.
take gym in this place. It's, girls are Indians, I can
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
not only men.
yeah.
And another thing I remember, the architect, we and I went round and round. He wanted to put in, at first, he wanted to put in locker bays. In other words, we have 300 lockers in a little room, another room had another 3. I said, no, no, no. He said, why? We're saving money. They know I like to save money. I said, no, no, no. Security's more important. You get young kids back in there, and hanky-panky, things going on that,
It's hard to supervise.
right, unsupervised.
yeah.
That's a good word, unsupervised. So I said, no, no, no. We will have lockers in the main corridor. Where we have to make the aisles wider. I said, so what?
Yeah,
We'll do it.
yeah,
It's little things like that, and he and I got into another argument. According to the contract, we had natural gas. The contractor provided their own heat. One contractor turned on our gas heat and heated the building. He ran up to $14,600 worth of gas. And I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And he and I went around. All he kept saying to me, it's in the contract, we got to meet it. Well, when the time came, he would not take a stand. He backed off. We had to hire an attorney and take the contract to the court, a local attorney. He knew he was at wrong. He
Yeah.
fessed up.
yeah,
$14,600. But I had to pay an attorney $400 or $500.
yeah. But you were protecting the taxpayer, you were protecting the taxpayer. You had to
that's
do
right.
that, yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. That's good.
Oh, yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Okay.
So talk about the financial pieces. You were sharing some very interesting information about how you did the bonds and how you did the tabulation of bids and how you and Victoria Kushwa were working on this process. Can you talk about some of that and how you got the interest and the investments that you made with the money?
The investment we made with, we just poured it into the school, and like I said, this building is worth about $9.5 million. That people only voted $8.6 million, but they got about another $900,000 worth of equipment.
Yeah.
Beauty. We expanded things, made things bigger. We had to spend that money. We couldn't keep it.
Right.
You can't spend it for another. You can't spend it for daily projects. You had to spend it on the building. We had to find ways to spend it, and we bought some good equipment, good chairs, quadri-line chairs.
You know, we just replaced the furniture for the first time last summer. So that furniture nearly lasted over 40 years.
We bought good furniture, but
Yeah.
it was the top of the line.
Yeah,
Back
yeah.
then. So I want to talk about something else.
Okay.
I visited many schools. I wanted to find out what schools were good and what things were not so good, some of these schools. And Dick Crusoe came to me one day, and he was a music man. He said, Mitch, we do not want a square auditorium. I never heard that before. Well, okay. He said, we have to have an auditorium where sound reverberates. And he told me, you go down to this one school south of here, and you see a square auditorium. We do not need a square auditorium. So I went down to the architect. I said, we don't want a square auditorium. I didn't know what I was talking about, really. But I visited some schools, and I saw how auditoriums are built. So Dick Kushroff, his idea, and he also wanted the orchestra pit.
Yeah. And your daughter got to play in the orchestra pit many times.
Yeah, we had an orchestra pit.
Yeah.
So that CPR, I have to give a lot of credit to Dick Kushroff. He's not here, but wherever you are, Dick, you did a great job for us. Talking about...
So not having a square auditorium.
Yeah, we didn't have a square auditorium. We had a great sound system. In terms of the cost of this building, the auditorium was the most expensive part of this building by square foot. It cost over $800,000
Yeah.
for that room, $800,000.
Yeah.
And so we did not have a square auditorium. We had a professional auditorium, a very good one. Good sound,
Yeah.
reverberates around there.
Yeah.
So we did,
Yeah, and I got to talk to Don Smith, who just raves and raves about doing all the musicals there over the years, and of course.
we had a professional stage. Believe me, we had a professional stage.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking of the time back in 1970, we were the state of the art.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember schools coming to visit
Oh, yeah.
our schools. And today when they build a new building, they don't put in nice gyms and nice auditoriums like what we have right now. They'll give you the academic wing, and then they'll tell the community you put the rest of it
Talking
in
about
place.
the gym again. They wanted to put in metal bleachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to Ed Perk. What do you think of these metal bleachers? Ed didn't want them. He said, we want wood.
Yeah,
Because metal, all kinds of noise and rattling, so we went with wood. More
Yeah.
expensive,
yeah,
but I could afford it. I should say I could afford it. We could afford it. We
Yeah.
had the extra $1 million.
yeah,
So we upgraded there. There's a place where we upgraded, going from metal to wood. So, moving into this place was a problem, a great idea too. First of all, I have to give credit to Gary Meek. Gary Meek was a take charge guy.
yeah,
He was in charge of getting things over here. Then one day I'm sitting at my office, and Bill Lester comes in and said, Mitch, I got a phone call from the National Guard or Army Reserves. They want to help us move in.
perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I said, Bill, go for it.
Yeah,
So, and one day we moved in real quick. And one weekend we moved in because of the National Guard. And that's another thing we had going back, and many people were disappointed we couldn't move in August.
yeah,
They wanted to start the year here. And I kept saying, no, we can't do it. And I brought in two board members in August. We went through the building. Then the third guy about father parent. And again, they questioned, why can't we open? I showed them what we had. Over by Columbus, east of Columbus, I visited the school. They opened the building before it was done. Now, if you open the building, you accept the building.
Yeah.
You accept as is.
yeah. All your warranties start. Yeah,
And I remember going to this home ec department. This lady was so upset. Here it is, February, and she still doesn't have her stoves hooked up. And I kept trying to tell the board, there's a process done accepting the building. And we haven't even come up with a punch list yet.
yeah,
If we accept the building, we'll never get that punch list done.
yeah,
Because if they accept the building, we pay them off. The way I remember it, most contracts, we kept back about 10% at the very end.
sure.
We have kept, that, so leverage on our part.
Yeah.
You finish it, or we're not gonna pay the 10%.
Very smart. Again, protecting the taxpayers. Yep.
Okay, I
Good
like
job.
that.
Yeah,
Okay, so I did that, and we came in about After the about semester break, I think we came in.
I think it was in February sometime.
In February.
Yeah, yeah,
The first thing we did was a basketball game.
yeah.
We had a basketball game here, and that went over very well.
What are some of the, what you would consider some of the innovations of the school? Because I remember the newspaper article talked about how we had science fume hoods in the science department, and
Our science department, again, another upgrade with the money, was equivalent to a college or university science lab.
yeah,
In fact, we kind of imitated what Miami University had, some of their rooms. We had a chem rock, I think they call it chem rock,
yeah,
which is very expensive. So we upgraded there. That's how we upgraded with the extra $900,000 we made.
yeah.
I had the extra money. I shouldn't say I. I'm sorry for saying I.
You were heading up the project, so you were balancing the budget,
We
so to
actually say
speak.
we.
Yeah,
It's really more of a team effort.
Yeah.
It's not Mitch Pedroff.
yeah.
I mean, look, I mentioned Gary.
I don't know. They said you were pretty tough back in the day, Mitch. They did. Every person I spoke to said Mitch had a plan and he knew exactly what he wanted, but they appreciated
Very
it.
dictatorial about it.
Yeah.
They couldn't do anything in this building without my approval until I left.
Yeah.
I mean,
What was the hardest part of the project? What was the most frustrating or the most challenging? What gave you kind of the midnight sweats when you were trying to get some sleep?
anytime you make a decision, you don't know if it's right or wrong. You wait a month or a week. And I think I lost a lot of hair back then because I kept waiting. Is it going to backfire? Is it going to fall? Is it going to fall in place? And Vicki once said to me, you know, things are falling in place like a puzzle. Everything we do is falling in place together.
Yeah,
Our school district had all kinds of trouble. They were being sued, they sued, and I don't know. We didn't have that. Everything seemed to keep falling in place. I don't know why, but it kept falling in place. Things
Yeah.
just worked out.
Yeah.
There's a good team effort. So it's 38 years later, and I can't remember the bad part.
yeah.
I can't.
Well, I tell you, and I spoke to several, I had several teachers, and I spoke to Glenn Honeycutt about this. When I came, it was 1987, so the high school was just that's when I graduated, I'm sorry. I came in 83 and graduated in 87. But I remember it being very much told to us about the importance of caring for this building. And I know a lot of that came from you and the standard you set right up front. And I got to tell you, I've been in the district 25 years now, and I've worked for 3 other superintendents besides, now me being here. It still was on everybody's mind. It's still on my mind, the importance of caring for this building. And I give you a lot of credit for
Absolutely.
really
Now,
starting
the reason we
that.
have that, we lost 4 times in a row.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we listened to people. They said, you won't take care of it.
Yeah.
Look what happened at Piqua High School, Central High School. You didn't take care of it.
Yeah,
So that was drummed into our Board of Education members, and they drummed it into me. Whatever we do, we have to take care of that building. That was the main criticism we had. Even the 1965 wing, we had the blinds, they were ripped.
Yeah.
Students rip them off. You notice there's no blinds in this building.
yeah, yep,
And the building, the windows are kind of tinted, but we did not want blinds because what we had at Old Piqua High School.
Yeah.
Things were ripped and hanging down, and I always said, Dick Pearson's hold-the-wall gang. They punch hole and put things up. Everybody was trying to do something at Piqua Central,
yeah,
and you walk through that building, and there's a hole-in-the-wall gang.
yeah.
So this building, none of that. I even forbade the use of Scotch tape here.
Well, yeah, yeah. I remember, so you had to fight that. Teachers couldn't put up tape things. And I remember everybody said it felt like a prison at first because there were no windows. And I remember people talking about it's clear out there. And then we had closed lunches. And so you had to fight through some of that initially when the building
It all
opened.
goes back because we lost 4 levies, 4 issues right in a row, and we listened to the public.
And a promise is a
All
promise.
listened to the public. I
Yeah.
listened to the public. And one thing we came up with, take care of the building. We give you $8 million, you take care of it.
Yeah,
And so, and a couple board members, they put that responsibility on it. You make sure they take care of it.
yeah,
They gave me absolute power. Even I overrode Glenn, and hate to do it, he was a good man.
Yeah.
I said, Glenn, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
Yeah, he shared that a couple times, and Gary Meek told me a couple stories, and but they respected it, they really did, and they understood ultimately
We
what
have to
the,
protect our building.
yeah,
Like you say, protect the taxpayers. They paid $8 million,
yeah,
and they still, you walk through this building,
yeah.
it's a nice building.
I think what's so neat is, this building was not built with technology in mind, because technology didn't exist like it did back then, not like it does
The
now.
only thing we were cared about, trying to make it energy efficient.
Yeah. But we've morphed space, we've created computer labs. This room right now, the media room, was once a shop room, and when that became an outdated program, we've changed, and this building has just beautifully transformed into whatever we need it to be to meet the current needs of our students and community.
That's true. And I try to get as much room here, as big room as possible. One other thing you ought to know, back during the campaign, there were many people who wanted the swimming pool here.
Yeah,
So I had to build a building with the idea, if we ever expand, there would be a swimming pool here.
uh-huh,
And where was it? At the end of this building, there's two signs.
yeah,
At the end of the gymnasium, you have those two doors. They will lead down the corridor to the swimming pool.
Yeah.
That's where the swimming pool.
What made it not happen?
Money.
Yeah, money.
And,
Because I remember around '87, Tony Morgan, he graduated in our class, he wrote an April Fool's joke. And the joke was in the newspaper, the smoke signals, and the joke was they were going to put a swimming pool on the third floor.
No, it was
And, right, but he was teasing about it, and I remember people were upset over the idea of a swimming pool at that point.
yeah, Bob Benjamin, who was on the Citizens Committee, really pushed for a swimming pool.
Yeah.
So we can have our own swimming team, and we didn't have to go to the YMCA and bother them.
Uh-huh,
And still, if they ever build a swimming pool, it'll be right back here.
Yeah.
In the east side of the gymnasium.
uh-huh.
And that's where it's supposed to be.
Now, when they first dug out here, there was enough water in the ground to make a swimming pool, wasn't there?
Yes.
Did that worry you a little bit with all the water, the
It's a
groundwater?
spring creek,
Yeah,
Spring Creek Township.
Yeah.
There were springs all over.
yeah, it was a muddy mess.
And we drained it, and right out front, we had our own water pump. The well, we had our own well.
Yeah,
It's just right down, the water came up.
wow.
So, yeah,
What are some other things that most people didn't know? Like, I don't think most people knew there was a potential for a swimming pool. Are there other
well,
things
the
in the
campaign
project?
people, I don't even know many of them knew, but the planning, our Citizens Committee, and Bob Benjamin was on it, and Adele Perry, a couple of those people, we wanted a swimming pool.
Mm-hmm,
But that'd be another million, rather than going for $8 million, $8.6 million, we're talking about $10 million building.
yeah,
And, yeah, it's a matter of dollars. And remember, to build this high school, our property taxes increased about 4.9 mils. That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
People have to increase their tax by 5 mils. Well, that was a factor.
yeah,
We have to see what we can sell. If you go beyond 5 mils, we had 4.9. We had the old Lazarus approach.
yeah,
So we came up 4.9 mils, produced $8.6 million, and we thought we could sell that. And that was the campaigns committee, was, well, we'll just finance, I guess.
yeah.
We have to sell it.
How do you think it changed, bringing the ninth grade out here? Because how did it change bringing ninth grade out here? Because it seems to me like Bennett and Wilder were getting pretty much, they were ready to bust at the seams with the number of kids
Well,
there.
that's true, but remember, when the JVS opened, we lost about 100, 150 students. So that was a factor too.
Yeah.
The 9 through 12 building, and it was better for our athletic program too.
Yeah,
That was a factor.
Sure.
And our music program, our band and everything else, it helped all our extracurricular activities. At the time, that was our thinking.
yeah,
I'm not saying it was right, that was our thinking.
yeah. When I came out here my freshman year, it didn't seem overwhelming to me. I mean, I know that was part of the conversation, but I remember when I came out here, I was ready for the moment, and just the high school to me was just, you couldn't wait to get to that moment in your
Yeah.
life. So it was a rite of passage, so to speak.
Right, that's right,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, well, I can go on and on, but as I say, my memory comes in spurts.
Yeah.
At my age,
What was it like when your own children got to come out here? Because you put a lot of, sweat equity into this building, and now your two daughters get to come out here and eventually graduate from here.
Yes, they graduate.
That had to be a good feeling that not only did the community
Well, I'll
benefit,
tell
but
you,
your own
that's what
kids.
kept me here. Once we passed that, I know I was going to be in Piqua forever.
Yeah,
I knew that.
yeah,
Because I knew once we had that building, my kids here, I'm awful proud of it. I think that the people of Piqua can be proud of it. And like I say, you have to give the people of Piqua compliments on their paying of taxes.
yeah.
Fred Keel was impressed with that. He said, you guys pay 99% of your taxes?
Right here.
Yeah, right there. 1973 to 79, we went 99%, 100%, 99%, 99%, 4 or 5 years. And then the businessmen, they pay 99, 98, 100, 100%.
And we're talking the 70s.
Yeah.
The economy wasn't doing the greatest
But
in the 70s.
1975 was a bad year.
Yeah.
There's a recession of some type. But our people paid taxes, and Fred Keel said, that speaks volumes of people.
Yeah.
At Piqua. Volumes and volumes. And people in New York will look at them, wow, look at these people. Look at these people out west. They pay their taxes.
And essentially, that's
No
our credit
delinquency.
rating. So it affected our credit rating in a positive way.
We had a AA rating.
Yeah.
And that's what some of my neighbors said, you guys, how, I try to tell them we got a AA rating. It's right here, a AA rating.
Yeah,
Guys couldn't believe it. I said, you guys can't quit pass your bond levy 4 times, you got AA rating? I said, yeah, but we have other advantages too.
yeah.
And they took notice of it. So AA rating is very good. It helps you, they know you're a good district, you're a
Right.
good bet.
Yeah. What's the greatest thing about the high school, your favorite part of it? What are you most proud of?
Yeah. Well, I guess the whole thing, I did like our auditorium. I was really proud of that, because I think it's very professional. Even you walk into that place, it's a warm place. It's warm.
Yeah,
And well lit up. I'm proud of the chemistry, our science labs, because we ended up having chemistry 1, chemistry 2, physics 1, physics. I was proud of that. And
Yeah.
I went to the other schools, they would have 1 physics class.
yeah,
We had 2,
Yeah.
physics 1, physics 2, chem 1, chem 2, and kids are taking chemistry in the summer.
yeah,
And these
Yeah.
guys, other schools, wow. I tell you, the people in Piqua, our kids were very scientific oriented.
yeah.
And so they were.
Is there something
They
that
love
you,
science.
other than the swimming pool, was there something you really risked we could have done, but we just weren't able to pull off?
No, it was a matter of dollars, strictly dollars. If we had to try to stay under 5
I'm
mils.
just going to move that so your microphone, so you can hear your microphone there.
We try to stay under 5 mils, that's the key thing. If you go over 5 mils, if you go over $10 million, it's.
Yeah, so staying in budget was a big,
You have to sell it.
yeah,
And they did a good job of selling it. 5 mils, $8.6 million, ended up $9.7 million, but
Yeah.
I'm proud of that now. I'm proud of the investments that we made, how we handled our finances, how we can get gas, got natural gas, we had the money. We did things that because we invested the money, not we, can. Vicky's very important there, Vicky Kushwa. We invested our money wisely, and we made interest. And I had to play games with the architect. He wouldn't know how much money we had. I wouldn't tell him. you know.
Yeah.
I kept it secret. Only Vicky and I knew how much
Yeah.
excess we had. Because if he had it,
sure,
that's the other thing I like to think our board should be proud when they appointed me as project director. When Van Buren came and met with the board, he was angling to hire a professional. And you pay them. Now, when you have a professional, he's going to follow the whims of the architect. I, as an educator, I was more interested in educational aspect. That came first to me.
yeah,
Like I said, the bays that we have.
yeah, yeah,
Went that in the building. So that's what I'm most proud of, things of that type.
Don, you taught at the old high school and you taught at the new high school, and you were in the business department. And I remember when I was out here, the business department was it looked so nice, and it took up a whole wing up there, and it was very organized. What was it like going from that old setting to the brand new setting with new technology?
It was a little bit sad in some ways because, number one, I graduated from the old high school.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, and to move to the new building was a really exciting time, and moving into this building was just totally exciting in that we had the opportunity to have all the latest and greatest things in education, and as a teacher I look forward to that. But at the same time there was sadness because I was used to the old auditorium and how beautiful that room was, and my classroom in the old building was so much larger than the new building because it was previously used for other things, and it was a large space. And we were allowed to do a lot of unusual things like painting on the walls. We could do that. And sticking things up on the ceiling, we could do that. Of course, at the new building, everything is pristine. So Dr. Pedroff was in charge at that time of what we could and couldn't do, and pretty much we couldn't do much as far as that was concerned. But for the most part, it was exciting, and I moved into the only room in the building that was red and blue.
Is that right?
Yes, my room was painted red and blue, and that was pretty exciting.
Wow, because there was a lot of oranges and yellows and greens.
Unique colors everywhere, and I made sure everybody knew that I had the red and blue room.
Yeah.
And I had chalkboards, lots of them, which at that time was so important because I taught accounting, and the ability to put things on the boards on both the side and the front really made it seamless for us. And of course today it's all smart boards, but back then that was a really exciting thing for me.
Oh, yeah.
And I had my own closet and everything. That was good.
Wow.
It was all good.
So anybody that knows you knows that you directed a number of musicals and
And plays. We had
You
seasons.
did the drama club, actually. I
Yes.
remember the drama
Yeah.
club when I was out here. And so the Hartzell Center for Performing Arts is beautiful in itself. I know it had less seating than the older high school auditorium, but a beautiful facility, beautiful center. What was it like the first couple times you got to do some plays there?
Well, it was a really interesting situation. We were in the process of rehearsing My Fair Lady, which was the opening show in the new building, and it was shortly after we had moved in.
Wow.
So we didn't have a lot of time to rehearse on the stage at this building. So we had to rehearse in the cafeteria at the old school because it was larger space and it allowed us to do the rehearsals. And I do remember the first rehearsals that we had in the new auditorium had no seats. And I was concerned a little bit about that because we were within 2 weeks of the show and we had no seats in the auditorium, and I figured it was going to be standing.
Yeah.
But the seats came and it was all good. But it was really exciting because we had so many more technical things that we could work with in the new building, which was also a challenge because we had new lighting systems, we had new sound system, and of course an orchestra pit, which we had not had in the old building. So it was really an exciting time to be able to come into the modern age as far as theater was concerned. And at that time we were doing seasons. We would have one musical and then 3 plays, and we would do those all in one style for that season. So it was pretty exciting to come out and to work in that new amazing facility.
Yeah. You talked about when you moved from the old high school to the new, and you kind of thought maybe you left on a Friday and that Monday. So how did that all get orchestrated? How did that happen so smoothly, or did it happen smoothly?
It was extremely smooth. I was very impressed. My students and I packed what we'll call my room and put all the books and put everything in boxes and had it all ready to go. And then we carried it down to a staging area. They were all marked with the room number of the building here that they were going to go into. And so they were kept in a sequence or a group, and then they were moved into a staging area. They loaded them on trucks, and on Monday when I came in, they were all in my room. Everything was ready to go. It was really very seamless, the move.
I think Gary Meek was in charge of that.
He was in
process.
charge, and if you know Gary, he's organized.
Yeah.
And it made it really impressive to me because we moved significant amounts of stuff in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Did the business department get any kind of new equipment? I know computers really weren't a part of any of that, but they always talked about how the science rooms had ventilating systems and different things. They got upgraded to a more modern kind of a classroom. Did the business department seem more modern to you as it moved out here, or
I don't think a lot.
Okay.
And the reason that is because in the old high school building, we were in the newest section. And it was a section built on the floor that we were on,
Okay.
was built for the business department,
Yeah.
not a whole lot of years before. So most of the spaces were pretty good. Now, I personally started teaching at Piqua High School, the old Piqua High School, next door to the print shop, which was kind of interesting because if they were running loud equipment, I couldn't have a lecture in my classroom. And then if I needed heat, I had to sit down and be quiet because when I turned on the heat, it was so noisy that you couldn't talk over the sound of the heating system. So, so those were things in the beginning of my teaching career, but as time went along, I was moved up into the main building on the second floor, and I had a really large room with a bank of windows which looked out at the other old building, but other parts of the old building, but it was a nice room for me to be in at the time. But moving into the new one, having the red and blue room was a big deal, so I really enjoyed that too.
Nice. So the students at that time kind of lost some of what we consider their privileges back then. Was like the open lunch was at the old high school, and it was a closed lunch here. And they talked a lot about how there were more windows at the old building and less windows here. What are some of the things you heard from kids back in the time as they transitioned to the new building? I'm sure they enjoyed it and loved the fact that it was a new modern facility, but what were some of the things they did or didn't like back then?
Well, the students that I was dealing with were pretty savvy. I taught accounting, a college-bound accounting program, and they were pretty excited about the newer facility. So I don't think there was a whole lot of concern. The lunch thing was a big deal because they could go out for lunch, and of course, where the old Piqua High School building was, there were restaurants very nearby, and they liked to go to those restaurants at lunchtime and be able to walk and get out of the building. Once we came out here, it was still a very pleasant environment. The cafeteria area, the commons area was just really very nice. I know teachers-wise, we really appreciated it out here because we actually had a lunchroom for us, whereas before we were eating at the desk or we were eating, you know, in a faculty lounge, basically. So that made a big difference, but it was really a nice transition coming out. What can you say? Anytime you come into a new facility with all the latest and greatest at the time, and now we're saying, well, you know, it's 40 years old, so we might need to replace this or that, and that does make sense, but it was certainly impressive at the time.
Yeah, definitely. So the first bond issue came out in 1970, and it failed 4 times until we get to 1978, and it finally passes. Northwest accreditation was at risk. There were lots of factors that was a driving force to get the bond issue passed. Did you ever think it was going to happen?
Oh yes, I really didn't have any doubt that it would happen because it needed to happen. And I think once you get the community to understand and to get past concerns about the cost and concerns about some of the other issues and what's best for education, then I think you're going to be on a winning team. And of course, those people who were operating the levy issues were so excited about it, and the student body was excited about planning a new high school building. So it was something that just kind of grew over time and just kept getting larger and larger. And I don't know this, I don't recall for sure, but I think each time there was a bond issue, it was probably a lesser defeat than the one before it, and then finally the passing one, which was really exciting.
Yeah.
And sad, because it really was sad to leave that old building, but, you know, still for something better.
Yeah, and that was some of the concerns that when they did the survey with the citizens, some of the people said we don't want to close the old high school. I went there, and my kids went there, my grandkids. There was a tradition of going there, and some of the people also said that they didn't think that the kids would take care of the new building. That kind of came out in the survey. You think the kids took care of the building when they got out here and it was well cared for?
Well, there really wasn't any choice,
Yeah.
because it was, the administration made sure that everyone understood that this was a gift from the community and that it was to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was any student who felt like that it wasn't taken care of. I think they really got involved. And you know, how could you be anything but positive when you walked into a building that was bright and colorful and had space for us to move around and do things? And you know, at that time, this amazing stage was put into the facility with all the latest equipment at the time, and you have all that to work with. You really want to save it. So I think the students pretty much were in that mindset.
Yeah, I remember that. I started in 1983, which would have been a couple years after it opened, and I remember not only that sense of pride and wanting to care for it because you were in such a great modern facility, but I remember them talking to us about making sure we cared for the building and that we were careful with, you know, how we used our resources. I remember a lot of other districts coming at that time and looking at the facility and marveling at it actually, and probably salivating and wishing they had it. Do you remember other school districts coming and taking a look?
And taking tours, and of course would talk to teachers about, you know, what are you missing in this building that you would have liked to have had, which really there wasn't too much in that respect. And so, yes, I do remember that. And I also remember that a lot of Piqua people went to other buildings in advance of construction to look at facilities and to glean the ideas from newer buildings of the time. So I think we got the best of both worlds.
Yeah. How did the staff get prepared for that first day when the students walked in? Were you guys oriented to the building? Did you get a chance much to come in and see what it was like so you could help kids get where they were? What was that like?
Well, as I recall, we were able to come in and unpack those boxes so that the room, really when the students came in the door, the building looked like it was in use. It didn't look like this is a new building, we've just moved in, there's boxes everywhere. Some of it was not ready. I mean, things like, I think the library, I mean, there's a lot more to moving that. But in my classroom, the first day the students were here, I did the same thing I did the day before the last day that we moved. The last day, of course, we devoted to getting things ready to move. But the day before that, I taught just like every other day. Well, the first day in the new building, I taught just like every other day. The only difference was we made sure we were in the hallways during transition from class to class because it was our job to make sure they could find where they were going next. And we had to have a little bit of understanding if they were a little tardy because it was finding a new location. Because the students in general had not had the opportunity to know how to get from the business department to the science department to the social studies area and to even to the commons at that point. So it was a little bit of that to help them out, but for the most part, I don't think there was a lot of holdups.
Yeah.
It was really very seamless. Anybody knows Gary Meek knows he had us all under control.
Yeah.
Took care of it.
One of the concerns, one of the pivotal moments actually on the bond issue was the fact that the land got donated by the Garveys and Hartzels. But then some people kind of said, well, gee, that's clear out there. It's way out at the edge of town, and that itself could be problematic. Did that ever seem to be a problem after the high school opened, that it was clear at the edge of town, so to speak?
Well, I think, you know, back in the day when I was in school, I walked to school. I lived on Gordon Street, and I walked about 3-4 blocks, and I was at my high school, and that was common. The majority of the student body were walkers, because I remember even in the days of that inclement weather, school wasn't closed, just the buses. So anybody who was a bus student, that meant mostly farm, country students, they got to stay home. The rest of us had to be at work, at school. And so that was one thing. I think once we moved out here, we got more snow days. So I don't think there was too much complaint over that, but it was interesting to have a distance to go, because I used to walk to school even as a teacher. I lived close enough that I could walk back and forth to the high school from my home, so it was pretty simple. But I think it was an adjustment. Students driving was an adjustment. At the Piqua Central High School building, there was not a lot of parking. It was only street parking around the building.
Yeah.
So you didn't have the massive amount of cars because most of the kids, like I did, walked.
Yeah. So when the building opened, I believe it was in February, freshmen didn't come right away because the freshmen were at the old Bennett and Wilder junior highs. And then the next year, they came in as well as that new freshman class. So essentially, there were 2 new classes. Was that different that the freshman class got added? Did it feel different that there were so many more students?
Well, there were so many young ones.
Yeah.
I remember being a freshman was unique for us because we'd always been just 3 years
Yeah.
of school. And it was good that it was done that way too. It was good that the student body came out here as the 10, 11, and 12, got acclimated pretty much, and then when the freshmen came, it was just like the freshmen would have come even to the old building. There would have been a new facility to learn. And so to bring them out to the new high school worked really well. It just was a little bit different because in the business department, which is what I was most familiar with, we had freshman students taking courses, and before that we had not had that at all. So there is a difference in learning between a freshman in high school and a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Their interests are different. As a senior, we always hope that they're a little more serious about it because they know college is coming up or whatever their future holds, and so they kind of take it a little more seriously, and the freshmen are just young at that point.
Yeah.
So we did have to get used to that a little bit,
Yeah.
but for the most part, in my case, I didn't have so much of that because I taught accounting, 1, 2, and college-bound accounting, and so that filled my whole day. I mean, I had 7 classes, all of which were in one of those 3 areas.
Yeah.
So and that didn't affect freshmen, so I didn't have freshmen initially.
Okay. I've asked the other teachers what their favorite part of the building is. I have a feeling I know what yours is.
Oh, well, it's got to be the Hartzell Center.
That's
for
what I thought
Performing
you would
Arts,
say, yeah.
Because I'm, even to this day, still very interested in the arts, and I think our facility is really good. And I got to be honest, when the building was being constructed, and I saw the stage in the drawing phase, and we had fly space, which for those in the audience who don't know what that is, that means that we can take a piece of scenery and go straight up with it. That was very important to us because it was so completely different. In the old building, there was no height. Everything had to be rolled up if we took a scenery from the back of the stage. So it was completely different that way. And I looked at it, and there were like, I don't remember the exact number, 12 or 14 units that would take things up. And I was really concerned about that because I didn't think that was enough.
Really?
I knew that if you're going to start doing professional looking theater performances, you had to have more ability than that. And so I happened to have a case of mono myself at about the time we were in the final construction phase, and I was home for 6 weeks. I missed school for the first 6 weeks of school. Yeah, it was difficult. But I spent the time, when I felt up to it, on the phone, and I called industries around town, and I got donations, and we put in more fly space because of that.
How many are there total now?
I think there's 20, maybe.
Okay.
It's been a long time since I worked it, but I think there's maybe approximately 20. So we got maybe 3 or 4 more. They were $1,000 a piece at that time to put them in, and we had to make the decision before they started installation. So I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Being sick or not, I had to do it then or it wouldn't get done.
Yeah.
So I made sure that got accomplished, and of course the new light system and all that was part of it. So it was a really cool thing, and to be able to do My Fair Lady there for the opening of the theater, and of course the Hartzells and the Garber families were both here. It was a big night for the students, for the faculty, and for the community to have that, because that was our first, I think it was the first really big thing that occurred out here.
Yeah.
because it was in March, and we moved in February. So we had maybe, I think, 3 weeks of rehearsal on the stage before we actually performed, and learning all the equipment, and it was just such an exciting part of it. So that's my favorite.
Yeah. Being in band and orchestra and musicals, I've been on that stage many times, but I wonder how many kids over the years have had the experience of being up on that stage and performing.
Well,
I can only imagine.
Every musical that I did while I was here had at least minimum of 100 students involved in it. And so, you know, you multiply that times the years. And then our plays always had between 15 and 25 kids in them. And like I said, the very next year after we moved in, we had a season. We did 4 shows on that stage. And sometimes I was directing 2 at the same time. So it was pretty intense, but it really was a cool experience. But a lot of students, and I can name several students who are today, many, well, up to 40 years later, who are actively involved in theater projects that they got started by being involved. I'm sure it's the same thing with this TV station.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, the students who are working in the TV station now, some of them are going to become interested in and become their careers.
Yeah.
And we had the same thing, believe it or not, with theater. We've had several students who became professional performers. I have one young gentleman who lives, not so young anymore, but he lives in Chicago, and he is a lighting and technical designer for shows. And of course, we took drama students to New York City. We had the drama club went to New York a time or two, and we saw shows in New York. So it was a very active time.
Nice. Your favorite memory of teaching here in the building? You have a favorite memory?
No, I have many favorite memories. The truth is, the students that I came in contact with were very respectful and were very goal-oriented. I was fortunate because teaching the subjects that I was teaching, they were all a choice that the students could take. So basically, the students who sat in my classroom were students who wanted to learn what I was teaching. And that made it a pleasure every day to come to school, because they really did. And I saw many people become successful in accounting for years after that. I can still name students who are, my students who are now professional accountants, owners of companies, and it's a nice thing to look back and think, well, I had a little something to do with that back in the day.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was, my teaching career was very important to me.
Yeah. Well, I remember it being a very successful business department. I had many friends that did it. I could never get that accounting packet to balance out to the penny. Never could make that happen. But I remember you being just the consummate professional, always instilling within them more than just learning what was in the classroom. And I remember you really having a strong department.
Well, it was. And the last year that I taught at Piqua High School, there were 5 students who earned valedictory positions. And 4 of those 5 were college-bound accounting students.
Wow.
And several went to Miami, Ohio State University. It was really an impressive group of students. And I was always proud of them. And we would get involved in competitions, accounting competitions, where we would go to Wright State and up to University of Findlay would have a big competition, and we always did really well. And I was always really proud. They worked hard and earned some pretty impressive accommodations. So it was nice.
Great. Anything else you want to share? Any other stories you can think of?
No, I just think that the city of Piqua has been very blessed to have a building that promotes education, gives the students what they need to be successful, and I think that's an important part of it. I have a little bit of bittersweet because I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel some foreign countries, and when I've done that, I've gone to the schools, and some of those are 200-year-old buildings or 300-year-old buildings, and they're still using them, and I'm a little impressed with that.
Yeah.
In some respects, it would be nice to have our old buildings still used somehow, but that's just not the way it is in America. So we've got the newest, latest, and greatest, and now with this new complex education-wise, with the schools all together out here, it's just a really nice place to be.
So Ed, back in the 70s, the levy failed several times until we finally get to 1978 and the levy passes. What do you think was the catalyst that finally made the public say, this is the right time for us to pass this levy?
Well, I think there were two factors that really weighed heavily. One was the survey that Gordy Wise and his group did, and Dwayne Bachman being the PR person that he was, made a big difference in the attitudes, I think, of the folks.
Yeah, and Dwayne was only here, I think, a couple years maybe prior to passing the levy. He had a lot of work ahead of him. How did he get out into the public and do so much lay work and get so much information that helped him get to that point?
Well, he had a lot of help, I'm sure, but that's Dwayne. The PR end of things is what he really loved and did a great job with it, and he just made it a point to visit a lot of different clubs and people.
So were you a part of any of the planning for the levy back then?
Very little of the levy itself.
Okay.
I think that basically was Mitch and Dwayne, and I'm sure the high school principal and a group that was really tight.
Sure.
With what they thought they wanted to do, and they did a heck of a job.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing a newspaper clipping. I would have been 3 years or third grade, 8 years old at the time, and I remember seeing the newspaper clipping of a lot of pictures, and there was a picture of you in the new Garby gym. So what was it like when the new high school opened and all of a sudden we go from the pit on Roosevelt to the Garby basketball gym? What was that like?
It was really unbelievable. First of all, the pit had a unique personality all its own, and it took us a while to get accustomed to what we have now. And I need to say this up front. I can't believe how nice everything looks today.
Yeah.
It looks just as nice as it did. And I know when I was still athletic director, people would come through and say, "Oh, I can't believe this place is 20 years old."
Yeah.
They've done a great job with that. But a lot of things changed, not just the gym portion, but it meant that the football team was no longer practicing on what we called Indian turf, which was dust behind the stadium. It came out here and had a full area of a field to participate in.
Right. Right outside the school door.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was so much better that it was just unbelievable. Then the other things that happened with that, of course, you have the basketball, the wrestling, so many different ideas and places. Own tennis courts on the facility.
Yeah.
There were endless numbers of things that just provided a lot more experiences for the kids in a better situation.
The weight room. I went by the other day and I was just thinking about the difference of just physical education, because the old gym at the old high school was so much smaller. And when you talk to people that attended events in that gym, it was, I don't think there was much seating, if any at all, but now you go into physical education, they could divide it in half. They can have 2 sections. The kids can do a lot in that gymnasium because it's such a great facility.
It is, and I think one of the things that we take a look at with the gym is the fact that the weight room is upstairs. We started with the weight room down underneath the old stadium where it would rain in on you if you weren't careful. So we got this going, but then our coaches really took that weight room a hold, and they did a great job of making it what it is today.
Yeah.
And if you see it today, you would be amazed if you had seen it back when it first started.
Yeah. You mentioned something really important. Back in the time period when they were trying to pass the levy, one of the concerns a lot of the public had was, would the students take care of a new facility? That was a big reason why some people didn't vote for it the first times. And several students would come forward and say, yeah, we'll do this. And I believe that has happened. I know when I started here in 83 through 87 is when I attended the high school. It was a very important message from the administration. And I think all the principals since then, all the superintendents from that point, have really taken care of this building and maintained it really well. What are some of the things you remember doing when it very first transitioned over here? What were some of the care and some of the messages we sent to students to make sure they understood the gift that the community gave us?
I think one of the big things for the reason why this building has stayed as nice as it has over all the years was Ms. Pedroff.
Yeah.
Mitch was the ramrod, so to speak, to make sure that everything was done, and if something happened, they got it done right. They got it fixed real quick.
Yeah.
So there was no, if you leave it lay for a while, somebody will add to it. And they did a great job of making sure that the maintenance was kept up. Students were excellent. Didn't have, I can't think of any problems that we really had with students tearing things up.
No.
They think think that was what they were going to do, I'm sure, back in the day, but it was excellent.
A real source of pride.
Staff did a heck of a job.
Yeah.
They really did.
So another kind of, not controversy, but some questions people had was when they decided to build it out here, it seemed like it was clear at the edge of town. And of course, the Career Center had just come into play, as well as even Edison, really. And it really did kind of complete the academic part of this campus, if you will. But what were some of the things you remember people concerned about when they was going to build the high school clear out in this area?
Well, I think they were concerned, first of all, about transportation, which worked out fine.
Yeah.
The students had their own transportation for the most part, although now that what we do, we transport all the junior high children out here and out to Spring Creek, and it all worked out just fine, the same as the other has with the new facilities that we've got. I think that the one thing that maybe made a big difference was the fact that we got to have a better insight as to what the possibilities were in the future.
Yeah.
And I think that was a point that really came out to the people, plus Hartzell's and Garbrary's, and the site ended up being perfect with I-75.
Yeah.
Right beside it.
It is. It's no secret that you and Cliff did some amazing things with building the stadium out here. You mentioned that we had the football practice field. We now have some baseball fields, and things have evolved in this area. You mentioned the junior high school. It really has developed, and it continues to develop. So what did you learn through the process of the high school being built that led you into that important work of Alexander Stadium and just further developing this whole campus area?
I think it was a pipe dream. We started out with the track, and the track went in, I believe, in 1986. And when we put that in, we went down and made sure we had all the measurements of words so that we could duplicate at least. And of course, one thing led to another, and through the generosity of our community, unbelievable facility.
Yeah.
And then that gave us a little bit of a leeway to do more than just practice.
Yeah.
Out here, we no longer transported the team in town every football game. It was just something that we really thought this could happen someday.
Yeah. It's so neat to look at Google Maps and see an aerial shot down on the campus now and to see how it's developed. And I think of all the safety that we've increased in terms of now students can literally walk out the high school doors at the end of the day and go to the different band practice and football practice and baseball and soccer. It's all right kind of here on the campus, and we don't have to worry about kids traveling to different locations. You mentioned the football team going down, and we've talked about earlier the band going to High Street, and just they kind of had to go to all different kinds of locations. So really, this, I think, probably revolutionized your sports program, your athletics. And
Well, it changed my job a great deal.
Yeah.
Made it much easier. The one thing that really helped was I moved from the Board of Education office into the high school.
yeah,
And that's where the action was at.
And the kids,
That's where the coaches
yeah,
were at.
yeah.
That's where the kids are at.
Yeah.
So that worked out beautifully. And the support that we got when we made the move from the administration was outstanding.
yeah. So I think Dwayne Bachman said that kind of the grand opening, if you will, was a basketball game. I think he said they opened up that night, had everybody come in, and there was a big basketball game. Do you remember that night?
Yeah, our first game was with Miamisburg, and before every game, I would go in and check the locker rooms and make sure, that everything was the way it should be. Afterwards, I'd check out to make sure it was still the same way.
We still do that.
And when we went into the visitors' locker room, someone from Miamisburg had carved into one of the wooden seats
Okay.
a little message from Miamisburg.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't anything nasty, but it was there. And that goes back to what I said earlier, people taking care of things, getting it done right
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
There's no adding to it because it wasn't there after
Right, yeah.
about a day or two that was taken care of. But yeah, that was the first game. Then that was the same year that they brought the sectional tournament into us. And I remember very distinctly hitting the panic button on that first day because we had a gym class taking place, and over lunch, which I didn't know, I don't think anybody knew it was going to happen, but the people who put in the big screen that separates the floor
Uh-huh.
into two parts for gym classes, they came up and sprayed it.
Oh,
They sprayed it with silicone.
yeah.
And Mr. Conley was the PE teacher at that
Yeah.
time, and he came into my office and said, "We got a problem. The kids can't stand up down there in that gym. It's like a skating rink."
Oh, my.
And so we thought, holy cow, how are we going to do this? We've got about 5 hours to get this thing straightened out. Well, with the help of everybody that was around, we got that floor mopped several times, and we were able to play. But the one thing that we decided amongst us was, nobody says anything about the floor being slick.
Yeah.
Just leave it lay, and every once in a while you see the kids reach down, wipe off the bottom of their
Yeah,
shoes,
yeah.
like, oh, yeah. So that was an interesting time, but it was one of those things that was rather unique.
Yeah.
Then the very first or second game in there, we had a rain out.
Oh, wow.
We had a leak in the roof right
Yeah.
over one of the foul lanes. And well, we rescheduled it for another time. We got it taken care of. But JV game went on fine, but the varsity game started leaking.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, we didn't have any problems at all, and we're still running
Yeah.
strong. It looks like.
A lot of people in town that attended games at the Roosevelt Fieldhouse, the pit, talk about how nostalgic it is and how great it was. And I remember being really little and going to those games. But I remember feeling just as great out here. In fact, it was just much more of an open feeling, and the atmosphere
Right.
was wonderful. And we had some great basketball teams back with Coach Zeller and on through. So I also remember graduations in there because we actually graduated in the gymnasium, and it was just packed. And there was people everywhere, and walking out of there was impossible at the end of it. So, but a great facility for that. Now we do it outside, of course, and hopefully there's no rain to do that. But the graduations are great in there.
Oh, yeah, I can remember our kids graduating in there, and sometimes it was pretty darn.
Yeah, yeah.
But today, I think you've kind of helped that situation out too.
Yeah, we always plan graduation for a day when we know it's not going to rain.
Yeah.
So I know your son went to school here because he's a little bit younger than me, and I can't remember, did Kathy get to graduate from here?
Kathy was, I think, in the first graduating class.
Okay, so again, you were in town, you watched the whole process. What was it like knowing that the school was going to be in place and your own kids were going to get the benefit from it? You're always advocating for the students and athletes, of course, but now your own kids get to come here.
Well, I think that our kids initially were so in tune with what we had before that they were kind of overwhelmed when they saw what was really taking place. And it was a situation where, one of them was graduating, the last class at the high school, that was Kelly, and Kathy was going to graduate as the first class at the new high school. And those are remembrances.
Oh, yeah.
That was great times.
Yeah. There's always that debate about which class was the first to actually graduate from here. And Dwayne said not to tell anybody that he came up with the idea, but he said to look at the diploma between 80 and 81 to find out which one actually just says Piqua High School, not Piqua Central. And we have a theory that maybe 81 is about the first one that probably says Piqua High School.
Yeah,
so
one of the big things that was driving the cheerleaders crazy.
Yeah.
Was we had the old PIQ,
Oh, yeah.
CEN,
Yeah.
TRAL,
yeah.
Piqua Central.
Yeah. I went, got invited to the 50th class reunion this year, and they did all the cheers, and they knew I was a 1987 graduate, and when they got to that cheer, they made sure they looked right at me and made sure it was a Piqua Central, not just Piqua High School, so that was a lot of fun to
They
do.
worked it out, fit right in perfectly.
Yeah.
Wasn't a problem, but that was a big thing.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember the first day when kids just started walking into the building and what that was like? I know the first year the freshmen didn't actually attend, right? Because it was mid-year and we didn't pull them from. But what were the kids thinking, and were they lost? What was it like?
I really can't tell you too much about that, but we had people stationed around the building to kind of help guide where they were going, and they had an open house or a couple of different times where the kids were able to come in and get acclimated a little bit.
Yeah. Nice. Anything else you want to share? Anything you can remember, your favorite memory of being here? Or?
Well, there's so many. The thing that I do remember is the generosity of the people of Piqua.
Yeah.
Starting with the building of the school, then moving to the stadium and through that era.
Yeah.
And that was great times.
I think it remains today. I think our community is very, very supportive of our schools, and it's very humbling. It's a great feeling to know that they support us.
Well, when you tell people, when we work the tournament games out here, in football especially, that there's no tax dollars in that facility, they just don't believe it.
Yeah.
And, we look and we see Tip City and some of these places trying to accomplish some of the things that we accomplished, and they're really struggling.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate with our community and the leadership that we have from our administration.
So Glenn, you went to Piqua High School, the old Piqua Central High School, right? Is that where you graduated from? And you were here in town in the 1970s when the first bond issue failed, and it failed several times until it passed in 1978. Were you working in the district that whole time from 70 all the way through?
I came back, I started my career at Spring Creek for 2 years, went back to Bowling Green on a graduate assistantship, got my master's, and I went to Ashland, Ohio. I was basketball, football, baseball coach, eventually became athletic director. Got my first principal's job there, and that first year I called Jim Weisskopf, who was the superintendent here. And I said, I'm in administration now, I'd like to find something on the junior high level. He said, we don't have any openings there, but we have one at Nicklin Avenue Elementary. I said, well, I'm not really an elementary guy, but I came down nonetheless, took it. Next year I moved over to Wilder.
There.
And they had about 800 students, open lunch hour. It it was interesting. So, yes, I went to Piqua High School, came back, and was here 25 years as an administrator.
So I remember you definitely being at Wilder. In fact, I remember reading the article when you changed from Wilder to the high school. And I remember that because my mom said she remembered you in high school, and she said, your principal next year, because I came to school here in 1983, is going to be somebody I went to school with. And I remember that article very well. I remember her reading it and talking about it. What was it like being in Piqua, knowing that we were ready to lose our accreditation from Piqua Central? I've talked to some people where they talked about how it was hard to get some business people and people for the hospital to come here because the high school and the accreditation wasn't doing so well then. So what was that like, knowing we had to overcome that, and getting a new facility was a really key component of that?
Well, we had a lot of support from the community, from the chamber, from the council of churches, and finally we got to a point where I think the open lunch hour, Bennett and Wilder, was a factor.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people concerned about Wilder, for example. Open lunch hour was 600-700 kids leaving the front door and going all over the community.
Sure.
That was a concern. So I think the accreditation was one thing, but I think the fact that it was made known that we would close those two buildings and they would have to stay at the building to eat lunch. And when that happened, of course, the freshmen in both buildings moved out here, and so it was about 1,200 students.
Yeah.
A lot of young people.
Yeah. We talked about you did not come out here the very first year it opened.
Yeah.
So Bill Lester was here. I think Gary Meek was here with them. Okay.
He and Gary Meek and Howie Reed moved everything from the old high school out here that half year. In fact, my daughter Tracy was in that class. So he was here for half year, then he went into the board office to work on transportation, and I came out in '81.
Okay.
So, huge challenge, huge experience. It was an honor. I loved my experience here, loved the kids, still do. I don't miss all the hassles of a high school principal. But we had a good staff. Bob Luby was out as an assistant. Ed Perk was the athletic director. And those two guys are pretty good.
So when I went back and reread the article that I told you I remembered, I thought to myself, having been a principal myself, almost what a daunting task that would have been, because I would imagine that beyond bricks and mortar of the beauty of the building, that people expected a whole different level of education. So what was your vision when you came here? I know you built a pretty good team. I felt it when I was a student here. I really did. I felt like we had the facility. We were so proud of it. But I felt that bar get raised a little bit. What vision did you have coming into this, and how did you pull all that together to make it beyond just the bricks and mortar?
Well, I think the key was the teachers. There were about 90 teachers. I just saw one in the hallway who reminded me that he's still circling the wagons.
Yeah.
And that was a term I used and a phrase I used, that, we all got to work together.
Yeah.
We got a neat situation here. We do with it what we want. And there was excitement from everybody.
What challenges did you face at first?
Well, as you know, when you walk into any new job, you don't know a whole lot.
Yeah.
When I was an elementary principal, I didn't know a whole lot about being an elementary principal.
Yeah.
Same way junior high principal. And same thing with a high school principal. I think I told somebody once that I walked in the first day, pretended like I knew what I was doing, walked around, met the kids, met the teachers, and was always involved in student activities, the music program, athletic program. And we had a bunch of neat kids at that time. And they pretty much responded, our theme out of the administrator's office with the principal and assistant principals, we had a no-nonsense philosophy. Do what you're supposed to do what you're expected, right from wrong.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost a little bit of that over the last 40 years.
Yeah. I remember I went to school with Dave, your son Dave, and Melody was a few years younger than me. What was it like when your own kids got the benefit from the school? Because there's the educator side where you're vying for that great education facility for the community, but now your kids get to come here.
Well, it was more of a challenge for them, I think, than me.
Sure.
I just treated them like anybody else. We had our conversations in the evening about their day and what they were experiencing. I didn't have my oldest daughter, Tracy, here that first year, but I had her at Wilder.
Uh-huh.
So it's a different experience for the parent and the kids. When you have your kids in school, you know, of course, I was always interested in what they were doing, but I also kind of ignored them
Yeah.
too much. And if I had to do over again, I'd do a couple of things different.
Yeah. So how many years were you the principal out here?
15.
15 years. Was it hard to turn the reins over? I know you and Kathy worked together a little bit, but was it hard to walk out that door? And I mean, you
Yes
kind of
and
essentially
no.
got it started.
Yeah, yes and no, but I was ready.
Yeah.
And it was time for some fresh blood. And over that period, I had 15 different assistant principals.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember several principals shifting in and out.
And they were all good, and they
Yeah.
all, you know, most left to become principal someplace, or
Mhm.
assistant, principal or superintendent.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, good people.
I got to say, you know, I've talked to a lot of the board members at the time, and there was a lot of shifting of the board members, and their message has been very consistent through the time period, and they really believed in it. And I think the assistants were the same. There were a lot of shifts when I was here, but I never felt like the philosophy or anything changed because of that. I always thought it was a good, consistent program. What about, what do you think in terms of how this campus has grown? Because when you look back in the early 1970s, one of the appeal was that the Edison campus had started and the Career Center was there, and this kind of finished out that area and provided a really great campus. But since then, we've got the junior high school, and we've got the Alexander Stadium, and some new sports kind of things have developed. What do you think about how that's continued over the years?
Well, initially, Dr. Pedroff ruled with a firm hand on
Yeah.
what we could do and what we couldn't do out here. There would be no tape on the walls. Anytime there was an issue with somebody needing an EO trip by writing their name on a desk or something, we would get it out immediately.
Yeah.
And I was just telling this young man that, you know, walking around the building now, it's amazing that this building is 40 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of changes. You know, Ed Perk came in, worked, raised about $4 million to build a new football stadium. I see the Memorial Garden out front.
Yeah.
We started that, I think, the year Charlie Tamplin passed.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably had 7 or 8 kids, and I'm sure there's been more since. But that's kind of a neat thing for the school to do and the kids to do.
Yeah.
The junior high, of course, has been a blessing, increased traffic out here. But it's just a great campus.
Yeah. What did you think back when they first announced this property, when the Garbrys and the Hartzels came together? I know I was only in 3rd grade when it all kind of came, but I do remember even my own parents talking about how the high school was going to be clear out there. What were some of your thoughts about that?
Well, my thoughts were the thoughts of the people in the community. A lot of them are concerned about it being out here, as you say. Kids walking, busing, extra cost, that kind of thing. So I think the Garbry donation of the land was a big plus. Mm-hmm. And of course, since then, everybody's used to it. So they said the same thing about Spring Creek
Yeah.
School being way out there. But you know, once it happens and it gets done, people adjust. And
Yeah. I remember my sister was older than me. When she went to the old high school, she was in band, and they used to have to walk all the way up to High Street for practice. And I remember the football team going down to the field house. And I think one of the greatest things I remember as a student out here was the day ended and so many kids stayed. And some may have stayed to do play practice, or they went over to the field for football practice. You know, we have a soccer practice field here now, and that had to change just operations in terms of the safety for kids and students to be able to leave school and stay kind of on the grounds to do some of their extracurriculars. Did you guys think much about that back then and the advantages that held? Did that get talked about?
well, there are a lot of issues that were talked about. You know, first of all, getting the kids out here and getting them involved, and I think initially maybe it did keep some students from participating. But again, you know, once we were here and got things started, they joined in. We had a lot of neat things going on. Had a great band at that time. Football team was great at that time. And athletics in general, I think, were pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think the kids identify with that and become part of it. And so it was an exciting time.
Yeah. We went from no parking to the old high school for students or staff to a pretty good parking lot. I don't remember a lot of kids, and maybe they did, because again, I was young, maybe, I don't remember them owning cars at the old high school, but I remember a lot of kids my age getting cars when the high school was built.
Yeah.
Did you notice a shift in students having cars and driving, and was there any problems out at that time in terms of kids coming to school in their cars?
Of course, I went to the old high school. I don't remember many kids having
Yeah.
cars either, but out here, people had money. They got their kids' cars, and was that an issue? I think initially it was. We had people coming out of Dayton, breaking in cars, and
Yeah.
we didn't have security cameras then, nor the policemen in the high school, but, there were growing pains. But for the most part, the students handled it pretty well.
Yeah, I thought so too. I remember other school districts coming to Piqua High School and giving tours. And sometimes you would come on in the announcements in the morning and say, such and such school is going to come in, let's give them our Piqua best. And, and the teachers would give us a little bit of a speech about that. And what was that like, having other school districts come? Because I don't remember a lot of schools being built back then. There was no OSFE dollars. And
I think the figure at that time was like 19 million.
Yeah.
But to build it today, I'm sure it'd be
Oh, yeah.
up to 50 million plus.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of tours. We had a lot of class reunions that wanted to come in and see the building and reminisce about the old building and the new high school, saying, "Gee, wish we could have gone through this building." But a lot of pride.
5, 4, 3, 2. Piqua Central has lost North Central accreditation. This happened solely because of inadequate physical facilities at our high school. Piqua was one of the very first high schools in Ohio to qualify for North Central membership way back in 1909, and now we are one of the very few AAA schools to be dropped from membership. We can change that picture by voting for the high school bond issue on November 7th. Please. Brought to you in the interest of a better community by Piqua's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman. Of all the Miami Central Conference football teams to play on this field this season, only one will come from a non-accredited high school, ours. Yes, Piqua is the only non-accredited high school in the MCC. The conference requires that all member schools be accredited by North Central. Please help your community regain an accredited high school by voting for the Piqua High School bond issue on November 7th. Brought to you in the interest of a better community by Piqua's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman. What will the new Piqua High School cost each of us? For the average Piqua School District property owner, the cost will be approximately $14.64 every 6 months. That's just about 8 cents a day. To find out exactly what your cost will be, check the campaign brochure being distributed all over the school district, or call PASS headquarters at 773-5875 for complete information. With free land to build on, and with our taxes going down next year because we've paid off many of our earlier buildings, the cost of a new high school will never be less. Please vote for the Piqua High School bond issue on November 7th. Brought to you in the interest of a better community by Piqua's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman.
Hi, I'm Andy Winans, President of the Student Council at Piqua Central. Are you planning to vote for the high school bond issue? If you're not, or if you aren't sure, please let one of our student council members take you on a tour of Central High. Take a good look at our music and arts areas. Look carefully at our laboratories and our science areas, at the gymnasium, at the classrooms in the basement which serve our English department. Don't be misled by the outside appearance. Please come and see for yourself. Then you'll know why North Central took away our accreditation. Then you'll know why people don't want to bring their families and move into Piqua. Then you'll know how terribly important it is for us to pass the high school bond issue on November 7th. We really need your help, please.
Presented in the interest of a better community by Piqua's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman.
Hi, this is Tracy Hennicutt. As a high school student, I get really upset when I hear anyone say that they aren't sure they will vote for the high school bond issue because we won't take care of it, that we vandalized and destroyed our present high school building. That's not true. Piqua Central is old. It's been well used, but it has not been abused or vandalized. It's just wearing out. If you really look it over, you'll see what I mean. Please help us regain accreditation for our high school. Only you can make this dream come true. Please?
Presented in the community interest by Pickwa's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman. What does a yes vote for the Piqua High School bond issue mean? It means using the 40 acres of free land donated for the high school site. We get that land only if we pass a bond issue. It means regaining North Central accreditation for our high school and being able to attract more and better jobs to the Piqua area so that our young people can find jobs and remain in our community after graduation to live and to work and to contribute toward making Piqua an even better place to live. All that for just 8 cents a day for the average property owner. That's what a yes vote means, and I sure plan to give the Piqua High School bond issue a yes vote. It's time to take a stand for the Piqua area and for what is best for our community. Presented in the interest of a better community by Piqua's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman. Did you know that at the end of this year, our property taxes are going down? That's right, down. At the end of this year, we'll have the bonds all paid off that finance Nicklin Avenue, High Street, and Staunton Street schools and made improvements in all the other districts. That's great news because it means that our taxes will drop by 1.2 mils, and that means it will be so much easier to pay for the new high school. Our net increase in taxes to build the new high school will be only 4.64 mils, and that also includes all costs of operating it. And the whole thing will cost just 8 cents per day for the average Piqua property owner. Let's take advantage of this tax break and get that badly needed accredited new high school built now while the cost is still within reach. Vote for the Piqua High School bond issue November 7th. Presented in the interest of a better community by Piqua's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman. Did you know that nearly 500 of your friends and neighbors in the Piqua School District are serving as volunteers with Piqua's active school supporters? Why? So that our community can learn all the facts about the need for a new high school in Piqua and the need to pass the school bond issue November 7th. Those folks are doing their best to carry this important message into every part of the school district. Would you like to help too? Would you like to carry the good news of how little it will actually cost us to gain the great benefits for our community of a new accredited high school, the good news of the free land we can have to build on? If you'd like to help in your neighborhood or in some neighborhood in our school district, please call PASS headquarters at 773-5875 anytime. And thanks from your community. Brought to you in the interest of a better community by Piqua's active school supporters, Beverly Pratt, Chairman.